There's one situation I've seen again and again in my practice. A woman sits across from me. We broke up a month ago, 2.5, and she asks me the same question. I can't move on. I can't stop thinking about him. She asks Mikhail. He regrets it. He's in pain without me. He understands what he's lost. And I'll tell you this question isn't weakness. It's a completely human reaction after a breakup. The brain searches for meaning in the pain, seeking confirmation that what happened mattered. But most women look for the answer in the wrong place. They analyze his words, reread his messages, ask their friends to look at his stories, and come up with theories about why he wrote this particular way. Today I'll explain where the answer really lies, because a man who regrets losing you doesn't hide. It manifests itself through specific recognizable signs. And when you see them, you'll understand what to do with this information. 9 signs. Each of these isn't just a signal. Behind each lies a psychological mechanism that explains why men react to loss the way they do. But first, context, without which the first sign won't make sense. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand 2 things for sure. First, does this particular man in your life regret losing you? Through his behavior, his actions, the things he doesn't do, not just the things he does. Second, what to do about it, because understanding it is one thing, but what you do with this understanding is another conversation, and it's more important than the first. Stay until the end. The 9th sign, the one most women completely ignore, is the most telling of all. I need to explain something important about how men cope with loss. It's not what you expect to hear. Men and women break up differently. Women, as a rule, experience the pain of a breakup, immediately cry, talk to friends, analyze, suffer, and gradually come to their senses. It's an unpleasant but relatively linear process. Men often do the opposite. For the first weeks, even a month after a breakup, they appear normal, sometimes too normal. They meet up with friends, go to the gym, post photos, and create the impression of someone who doesn't care. This doesn't mean they don't care. It means their brain hasn't yet processed the reality of the loss. Because while he's busy, while she hasn't returned, while there's no contact, while he's not faced with the concrete consequences of her absence, the abstract thought, I'm alone, doesn't transform into sensations, and then something happens a month, 3, sometimes 6 months later, reality sinks in. And that's when the signs I'm going to talk about now begin. They don't always appear all at once. Sometimes 1, 2, 3, but if you see more than half of the 9 answers to the question, does he regret it? You already have the first sign. He finds reasons for contact that weren't there before. This seems obvious, but the devil is in the details. I'm not talking about a direct hello, like you, although that too. I'm talking about indirect contact. About how he writes to you on business, which is not urgent, forwards some article that you would definitely appreciate, comments on your publications, where he was silent before. Each of these contacts in itself looks innocent. That's the trick. It's his brain working against him, looking for any socially acceptable reason to reduce the distance without recognizing out loud what exactly he does. Pay attention to the frequency. One time doesn't mean anything. Systematically, over and over again, on different occasions, that's already a pattern. And here's where the most interesting part begins. Because the first sign is always connected to the second, one without the other is rare. Sign 2, he looks at your stories first, or very quickly. I know this sounds like a teenage analysis, but there's research on how people interact with content on social media after a breakup. When a person is systematically among the first to view your story day after day, it's not a fluke of the algorithm. This means he's visiting your page purposefully. He's checking what you're doing, how you look, who you're with, whether happy. But what's important to understand is that he does this because you take up space in his head that he can't or doesn't want to free up. And this isn't weakness on his part, it's a signal. However, the first two signs aren't the most convincing yet, because an alternative interpretation is possible: habit, boredom, curiosity. So pay attention to what's going on further. Sign 3. And mutual acquaintances start mentioning you in conversations with him, and he doesn't stop these conversations. It's subtle. And that's why it's important. When a man wants to move on, he usually stops talking about his ex-partner. He says something like, "I don't want to talk about it," or simply changes the subject harshly and quickly. When he regrets it, he allows these conversations to continue. Sometimes he asks questions himself, disguised as indifference. What is she doing normally? Or she doesn't ask but listens attentively, very attentively. Mutual acquaintances notice this. And if at least one of them said something to you, like he asked about you or he reacted somehow strangely, when I mentioned you, this is not gossip, this is data. Sign 4. It demonstrates changes in the very things that caused conflicts between you. This is one of the most underestimated signs and one of the most important. You broke up because he didn't show up for important events for you, or because he didn't know how to listen, or because he avoided serious conversations. And suddenly, sometime after the breakup, you find out or see for yourself that he started doing exactly that. Showing up, listening, talking about feelings with someone else. I understand how painful it is to see this, but it's also a sign, because people don't change in a vacuum. Changes in a specific direction after a breakup are often a direct consequence. The realization, I lost her because of this. This doesn't mean he's changed for you. It means that you've made it clear to him what exactly requires change. Sign 5. He avoids publicly displaying new relationships. Oh, his new relationships look exactly like a display. Two scenarios, and both indicate the same thing. First, he broke up with you. Enough time has passed and there's no new relationship. Or there is, but he doesn't show it, doesn't post photos, doesn't mention it, keeps it secret. This can mean many things, but in the context of other signs, it suggests that a part of him hasn't gone away yet. The second scenario, and is more common, is that he has a new girlfriend very fast, too fast. And for some reason, he makes a public event out of it. Post photos where you'll definitely see them, shows up at places you go. It's called reactive behavior after loss, an attempt to drown out one feeling with another, to show you that he's okay, that he's not suffering. People who don't really care waste energy on demonstrations, remember that. And this is where things get complicated, because the fifth sign brings us to what's going on inside, and it changes everything you think about male psychology. Sign 6. He starts acting like he's trying to become the version of himself you wanted to see. Stop there. I've been working with people for many years, and I see this pattern all the time. A man after a breakup starts to change, not because he met a new person who inspired him, but because there's a very specific image of him in his head. An image of the person he should have been with you. He starts going to therapy, where you invited him, reads the books you mentioned, and does that. A hobby that you once described as attractive, or it becomes more open in conversations with loved ones. It's not always conscious. Sometimes he himself doesn't understand why he does this. The brain makes a connection. If I were like this, she wouldn't have left. And he begins to move in that direction. But what's important to understand, and this is what most women miss, is that this change is real. It happens, but it happened after the breakup. The question is not whether he has changed. The question is whether this is enough for you. And only you can answer it. Sign 7. Inconsistency appears in his behavior that was not there before. He writes, then falls silent for a week, warm and open when meeting, and cold in correspondence. Initiates contact and disappears. As soon as you respond, it is confusing. And many women perceive this as a signal of indifference. He is playing with me, or he is bored, or he is just checking that I am still available. Perhaps. But there is another explanation, which I consider more accurate for most cases. When a person is in a state of internal conflict, at the same time, he wants to come back and is afraid of making a mistake again. He wants contact and doesn't know what to do with it. His behavior becomes inconsistent because he hasn't made a decision. He acts from contradictory impulses. This is not an excuse, it's an explanation. Inconsistency. One of the most reliable markers of an internal struggle. An indifferent person behaves consistently coldly, consistently distantly, precisely because he really doesn't care and there is no conflict inside. Now the 8th sign, and this is the one I call a mirror, because it shows not what he feels for you, it shows what he thinks about himself. Sign 8. He returns to places, memories, and people who are associated with you. This may sound romantic, but I want you to understand the mechanism behind it. When a person regrets a loss, the brain begins to work in nostalgic mode. Reconstruction. This is a real phenomenon. We idealize what is no longer there. We remove the bad, enhance the good, and begin to look for common ground with what was lost. He returns to the restaurant where you were together, starts listening to the music you showed him, calls friends he met through you. Sometimes, and this is especially telling, it returns to your shared conversations, mentions one of them. You said then, I remember you said, this is not manipulation, this is the brain trying to maintain contact with what was lost through material points, through sounds, smells, place. But here's what's important. Nostalgia is looking back. And a person who looks back does not look forward. This does not mean that he is ready to build something new. It means that he is still inside the past. This is the difference that must be understood. Sign number 9. He speaks of you with respect, especially when he could speak differently. This is the very sign that I call the most eloquent. After a breakup, especially a painful one, people are tempted to speak badly of their ex-partner to justify themselves, at the expense of the other to make something less of him or her so that their own pain seems less. She was too emotional, she did not understood me. We just weren't right for each other. It's a normal defensive reaction. Psychologists call it devaluation. It helps you survive the loss by reducing the significance of what was lost in your own eyes. But when a man who broke up with you on his own initiative or by mutual decision continues to speak well of you, when he doesn't devalue you, when mutual acquaintances say that he spoke of you with respect, that he admitted his mistakes, that he called you an important person, it's worth a lot because it requires a person to keep the pain open, not to close it at the expense of your image. This means that he respects the reality of what was, even when this reality is no longer around. And this, in my opinion, is the only sign out of 9 that speaks not just of regret, it speaks of maturity. Okay, you've seen the signs. Maybe you recognize one, maybe 5, maybe all 9. Now the most important thing. I'll tell you what I say in my practice, not because it's nice to hear, but because it's true. What a man regrets is not itself in itself a basis for anything. Wait, don't leave. Don't leave. I understand that you want to hear something else. That if he regrets, then there's a chance. Then he can still come back. So the pain of the breakup made sense. But here's the problem with this logic. Regret is an emotion. It means a person feels a loss, but it doesn't say anything about whether he's capable of changing what led to that loss. Is he capable of giving you what you need? Is he willing to invest effort, not in beautiful gestures of return, but in the daily work within the relationship? I've seen men who regretted sincerely, deeply, painfully, and then did again exactly the same thing that destroyed the relationship the first time. Because regret without change is just pain. Your pain, not work for your sake. So the question is, does he regret? The question is what he does with his regret. If he uses it as fuel for real change, that's one thing. If he uses it to periodically pull you back without, to create contact without intention, it's different. And this is where I want to stop for you because I've talked about it in this conversation, but I have something important for you. You know what I notice over and over again? When a woman asks me a question, he's sorry. She's not asking it to get information. She's asking it because she's looking for permission to do something, permission to come back, or permission to finally let go, or just confirmation that she was important, that the relationship mattered, that she wasn't wrong to open up. Here's what I want to tell you straight. You don't need his regret to validate your worth. Seriously, your worth is not determined by how bad he feels without you. I work with people. I see women spend months, sometimes years, in a state of waiting for a sign, for him to confirm that he's making a move. And during that time, they don't move. G stands still until they wait for his regret. That's a huge price. The 9 signs I talked about are a tool for understanding, but understanding is only the first step. What you do with this understanding is your choice and yours alone. If you see the signs and feel like you want to give it another chance, fine, but go into this with your eyes open, not because he regrets it, but because he's changed. Those are different things. If you see the signs and realize it doesn't change anything for you, that's fine too. That's fine too. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. Clarity is what I consider the most valuable thing in any relationship, including the relationship with yourself. The last thing I want to tell you is that a man's regret is his job. Your job is to know what you want and move in that direction, whether he catches up or not. If this conversation was helpful to you, let me know in the comments. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Just write which of the 9 signs you recognized in your situation. I'm reading. And if you want to figure out how to not just understand a man after a breakup, but also understand yourself in this relationship, we'll talk about that next time, because it's more important.